just talk about when you first moved to San Francisco and why you wanted to move here.
I moved to San Francisco in 1984, and I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was involved in this radio project for 10 years, and I was done doing that. I just needed to do something different, and I wanted to go to some place that had a bigger music scene, and so, and you know, the benefit of nicer weather was also good because I was coming from Wisconsin, so it was a factor for me. Yeah, so, and I had been here, I'd visited here a couple of times because my brother had lived here in Berkeley, not in San Francisco. So yeah, that was the main thing, was the music scene. Because I was involved in music in Madison at the radio station.
Did you move to the Mission? Anything?
No, I first moved to the Sunset. I was at like 19th Avenue in Irving. Found an apartment out there. Because I didn't realize the fog. I didn't know about the fog at that point. So I moved out there, and I was there for 2 years, and then I moved into the Mission because I had friends that lived in the Mission. And so I would call them and be like, what's the weather like today? Because it was always foggy where I lived. At that time, it was even more extreme than it is now. But, you know, all summer, the first year that I got here, I moved here in the fall, so the weather was really nice out in the avenues. And then in the summer, all of a sudden, the sun went away for 2.5 months. I never saw the sun. There was only 1 hour of sunshine in the avenues or in the Sunset during that summer. So I had friends in the Mission, and I used to visit them. You know, it would just be sunny and beautiful. And I was like, oh, I have to figure out a way to move. So I moved to the Mission in '86. 2-bedroom flat, utilities included, $800 with huge 2-room living room and a 2-room like kitchen area, dining room.
Wow.
It was really, really nice.
26th and Cap.
Yeah. She ended up moving in there with me. So yeah, it was cheap. That was one thing that, you know, you had wondered, like, well, what were the things that you remember about the Mission from those days? It was so inexpensive. If you were willing to have roommates, you could live in the Mission. You know, rent would be like you'd have your own room for $250 a month.
Damn.
Yeah, that was the kind of normal rent for everybody that worked for us at Radio Valencia. They would be they would be 4-bedroom Victorian flats, of which there were tons in the Mission, like with multiple stories, 2 or 3 stories of flats, and they were all rentals. And people would rent the whole flat, and it would be like $1,000 or $1,200, and they would split the rent 4 ways, and everybody was paying $250, $300, then it went up to $350, you know, but it was like all under $500 per person. So it was just inexpensive.
Yeah, our house on San Carlos, you know, that we moved to.
Yeah.
That our flat that we were in was like a notorious flat
Oh.
for musicians. And our friend Tynan, who's a good friend of Greg and Gail's, the first time she came to dinner, she was just tripping because she was like, "This is just so weird sitting in here with you and your kids. Like if you could see what's in my brain right now,
Wow.
you know, just the parties and like tons of people lived in that flat."
Oh, wow.
And she lived there for a bit.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
People that you knew?
Yeah.
Before you did?
Yeah,
Okay,
some not, but you know,
Yeah.
punk rock bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just like, because there was a lot of rooms, and you can make a lot of rooms, right? But they just only had the kitchen as their communal room, so all the other
Okay.
spaces were,
Yeah.
you know, rented out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, people lived in dense situations, you know,
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 roommates.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of big flats like that available. And everybody talked about it, you know, it was like, oh yeah, you know, you can move. You know, if you get into a fight with this group that you're with, you know, or you don't like somebody there, you could move. And then suddenly, like in the late 90s, it was like you were playing musical chairs. Like everybody would move around, move to these people, you know, like couples would get together and then they'd break up and they'd move, and they'd split up and move to different places. And then all of a sudden, the music stopped. Everybody had to stay wherever they were because the rents just like doubled
Yeah.
in within a year or two.
Yeah.
You know, everything was really, it got super expensive, and it was just like.
And then everybody moved to Oregon.
Well, that was one of the first
The
things
first .com.
that people did. The exodus occurred starting in the late 90s.
Mhm.
People were moving. And then that little bubble burst. That was the .com bubble. That bubble burst, and then rents went back down, and it got more flexible again. Never got cheap like it was in the 80s and early 90s. So
Yeah.
rent was the big thing. It was super cheap to live in San. And you know, then of course the thing that was really appealing about San Francisco was its bohemian history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody knew about, you know, Kerouac and North Beach and the beat poets and all that stuff. And then the next stage after that was all the bands that played that were based in the Haight or just San Francisco in general.
Yeah, and in the 80s, the Haight was like the scene,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for punk rockers and everybody like that.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of people lived over there, you know, and then people started moving over to the Mission.
The Mission was really dangerous in the late 80s and the early 90s because it was controlled by gangs.
Mm-hmm.
And there was gang wars going on and people would get shot. And bystanders, innocent people, would just get shot sometimes. So it was very violent, and the police didn't have any idea what to do. And people would say, like, San Francisco, the Mission's never going to get gentrified as long as the gangs control the Mission, because they just, you know, they're intimidating, and they would purposely intimidate people like us. You know, like we were the gentrifiers essentially by, you know, white people moving into the Mission was a cause of friction. But, you know, people couldn't, you know, it just kept happening. People moved to the Mission in large numbers in the 90s. And then Valencia Street became like the hip. At one point, the Village Voice in New York wrote, Valencia Street is the hippest place in the country. You know, so, you know, whatever that means, you know, it was just like there were so many things going on, there were so many musicians, like every person was a musician in the Mission almost. The whole population of everybody we knew, everybody that came to the cafe, all my friends, and all of the people that I would meet at bars, like the Latin and the Makeout near where we lived, they were all musicians. Everybody was in a band. And it was a joke, you know, people would say, everybody's in a band. So most people are in 3 bands. So it attracted that group. And then there was also, basically that birthed the whole style of music. And there was an art scene as well. I'm just not that familiar with that, the Mission art scene. I know about it, but I wasn't connected with that group. But I was in bands, and so. And then we had music at our place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you opened Radio Valencia, like, did it feel like there was a lot of places like that already happening in the Mission, or did you feel like what kind of like inspired you to make it about art and music and not just be a cafe?
Well, I wanted it to be about music. That was the genesis of it,
Uh-huh.
because I was interested in that. And I wanted to have a place where I could put on shows and, you know, not informal, you know, not like a hardcore rock club or anything. I didn't want to have, like, I didn't want to have to charge admission. I just wanted music that was free and, diverse. But there were already a lot of places in the Mission just down at 16th Street. That's where all the activity was in the early 90s. There wasn't anything out where I was, out at 23rd and Mission and Valencia or
I'm
Mission.
trying to think, there wasn't that many cafes down on 16th Street.
Yeah,
there was,
'cause you did
there
have-
was
you
stuff,
did-
but there was,
Yeah,
there was
big ones, Picaro
Uh-huh.
was a huge, and then
Yeah.
there was the place next to it was a cafe.
Yeah, Picaro was like a restaurant.
Yeah, but
But not like
but they
radio.
owned that cafe that was next to it.
Yeah.
And it was a big place.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the
Yeah, I
name
can't
of it was.
remember.
But that place was really popular. Everybody went there.
Yeah.
You went there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a big old school kind of mission style cafe, which I think of as being like a lot of old tables and a lot of room. People moved around. People would sit there for hours.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a computer world at that point. People
Yeah.
didn't use laptops.
Yeah.
So people would go to cafes and they would talk. So it was more like that.
Yeah.
And we didn't have computers. We didn't have Wi-Fi when we opened Radio Valencia. There was no, people wouldn't sit with a laptop. That happened later though, in the late 90s. Everybody was on a laptop at that point. People wrote books and stories and plays in our cafe, at that time. Josh Kornbluth worked there, 3 times a week probably put in 15 hours a week in the cafe during the day, writing his plays. We were trying to do something with live music. There were other places that had informal live music like that. Cafe Babar is one that was near us on 22nd and Guerrero. And then there were other venues. There were, a good number of venues, actually. But I think when I look at the early 90s, there was a kind of a base of businesses and, things that were working, but it was all centered down at 16th and Valencia.
And also, too, there wasn't that much up where we were on 23rd Street, but there was a gay culture there for a long time. So there were places, there were clubs and bars, and the Artemis Cafe was Radio Valencia before, we took it over. And they had music, and she was there for 10 years. She had a recorded music there, very dedicated. So there was like this established community there, but it just kind of fizzled out, and then there wasn't much happening up there.
Yeah, in the 90s it all kind of
I
shifted
don't know
over.
why, but-
And then people moved from every other place and from every other state in the Union, I think, into the Mission because it was cheap and the word was out. It was like Brooklyn now. It was like that's where you would go if you moved to San Francisco. And San Francisco was very appealing at that point because there were a lot of bands from San Francisco that were notable. They were touring in New York and it was cheap, so a lot of people moved here instead of anywhere else. All the people from Chicago, the Midwest, moved down to San Francisco, Detroit, and Michigan, all the places that were cold and difficult to live. After people graduated from, all the big universities and stuff, they'd go out to San Francisco and see what was going on there, try it out. So it was accommodating. But we wanted to do music, so we were looking for a space where we could do that. And that wasn't that hard at that point to do. It's never easy, but we were basically running a cafe so that we could have live music. When we first opened the cafe, we had, 4 little things you could order on a blackboard. It was just like heated up bread with cheese cheese toast, yeah, basically.
Couldn't be
And then we
better.
had draft beer,
Oh my
our
gosh.
thing was we were trying to sell coffee and beer.
Yeah.
So we were trying to be that place where people would just go there and either in the daytime they would drink, cappuccino or whatever, and then at night they would have draft beer because we had an interesting selection of draft beer. But people wanted food because the whole 5-block area around Radio Valencia was pretty flat, so people could walk, and there was nothing else. There were very few places that people could get the food that we offered, which were kind of like soup, salad, and sandwiches. But we immediately, it took about a year. We were just like gradually every month getting more.
Because
and
they're
more
like, why
business.
don't you make this? Why
Yeah.
Don't, okay. Well, why don't you have 4 soups? Yeah, just like, well, I just went to this place and they do it this way. Okay. Yeah. It's just kind of how it went.
We were accommodating people just to build the business.
Yeah.
And, so we started to get fairly good at it, and then the fire truck ran into the place and shut us down for like 8 months. And then we retooled. Then we figured everything out because we knew what we were doing by that point. So it happened at a good time for us, because we were able to drop certain things off the menu that were really hard to make and really hard to make at the level that we needed. So we tailored our menu more toward what we could accomplish. And then when we reopened, we became a lot more popular and a lot more successful in general. I think people were happier with the service, happier with us, happier with the menu. And, the music got better as well. So it really kind of matured into a decent business. But then we had to move because we couldn't find anyone to take it over. When the babies were born, it became more complicated to run the kitchen, the cafe. Couldn't find anyone to take over the kitchen. We
Nobody
tried.
wanted that job?
No.
Sounds awesome.
Well, I'll tell you
It was a
why.
difficult
It was
job.
because right at that time, people were getting paid so much money to cook.
Oh, yeah, they were
and run
wrong.
kitchens. They were getting really great wages, and there was a lot of competition for kitchen help. So, we just couldn't pay somebody.
And we didn't have an opportunity for growth. There was no menu development. There was,
Yeah.
we had
Yeah.
we had ovens that we heated bread and nachos, but we didn't have a grill. We didn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
flames.
Right.
So, you couldn't really grow into being
Yeah.
a chef
Right.
at Radio Valencia the way it was,
It was
designed.
limited.
Yeah, it was just like fast food kind of, but healthy fast food. A lot of work. A lot of work to produce it. Felt it was reasonably priced, and people did like it. People came back every, people ate there multiple times a week. Seems
Yeah.
like, and single guys in particular came there a lot for dinner.
Everybody brought their parents there when they visited.
Aw.
Really cute.
Yeah. And then the music thing ended up working out pretty well, because we had a regular Friday night thing, and then we had bluegrass on Sundays, and then we had more different kinds of inventive music on Saturdays. More improv stuff, or also international, sort of like Eastern European folk music. It's diverse.
Did you feel like most of the people that came there and worked there were like artists and like part of that scene, or did it seem kind of diverse?
No, it was mostly young artists and musicians that would work. I
Mhm.
pretty much interviewed everybody and was interested in their music interests and their music background. So I wanted people that had some sense of that, because we had a music theme in the cafe, because we did playlists, and so a lot of the staff would contribute playlists. Basically, they would design a cassette tape and make a guide for it, so that you could see what was playing
We didn't
at your
always have
table.
the most skilled staff,
Yeah.
but they loved music.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah,
went out.
Wacky crew.
Everybody went out to see shows.
Yeah.
most of them stayed playing, and I was involved in bands with them, for years. Even
Well,
after the
you just
cafe
did
closed.
the book tour thing with Greg and, with Gail and Grant,
Yeah,
both from Radio Valencia.
yeah,
Grant became a writer.
right, yeah. Gail photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the musicians, I still see them because they're still playing in the mission. They play at the right spot now. The people that played at Radio Valencia, a good number of them. And it's also a similar kind of place.
Mm-hmm. And also too, if you weren't a musician or an artist, you're definitely there to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Participate in some way. Everybody had an interest in that and supported everybody.
And then it evolved. I mean, people got into making clothes, and we had a clothing designer across the street who had her own shop, She worked at the sewing machine in the back, and everything was on display out front, and it was a very successful
And there were
business.
little galleries that opened up and
Yeah,
down
art
Valencia
galleries,
Street. So like at nighttime, everybody would go out and go to the bars and go to those little galleries and
Record stores,
yeah, it was
Really-
just really crowded.
really good record
A lot
stores.
of creativity. Yeah.
It was
And
very-
you'd always hear music out the windows and stuff, somebody playing the accordion or I don't know what, just everywhere you walked, any time of day. You'd always hear somebody up in their apartment or in a garage or something, rehearsing or, it was just kind of everywhere, which was really nice.
Where the chapel is now was the new school, and the new school had rehearsal
Yeah.
spaces because they had a music program there. So they were, a lot of stuff. It felt like there was a lot of stuff going on. By the end of the 90s, in 1996 through 98, there was a bar explosion in that area down in 16th and Valencia. A bunch of bars changed hands, and then it got written up like on the front of the entertainment section in the newspaper. It was like the place to go, and that's when that whole thing happened with the Village Voice, because Casanova and Dalva and Skylark, and there were like 5 bars that changed hands within 1 year, and it became like the bar hopping place to go from everywhere in the city. People came from all over, and then also on the weekends from Fremont and everywhere. It was a central hub, but it was too crowded for people that lived in the Mission to go out on the weekends to the bars in the Mission, because it was all packed with people. So everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, you can't go out on the weekends. You just gotta wait till Monday, Sunday, or whatever." And that was a problem at the Casanova. It was one of those bars that you couldn't get in, and it's still kind of similar. On the weekends it's pretty jammed. But there were Casanova, Blondies, and Elbow Room. Elbow Room opened.
Mm-hmm.
Blondies was already there. Elbow Room opened in that window, and that was like a giant. That's where I don't know what it's called now.
El Valenciano.
Oh,
Was
The
that what it's
Valencia
called?
Room.
Or the
Oh,
Valencia
Valencia
Room,
Room,
that's
yeah.
what it is, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
called
they had live
Valenciano.
music. They had a really diverse program of live entertainment on the second floor,
Yeah.
and then a bar down below, and it was really popular business. Casanova was always packed. Blondies was always packed on the weekends because they had dance DJs, and then around the corner at the Skylark, it was dance DJs.
And then there was also Kilowatt,
And Kilowatt had music then. They had stage,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they had live shows. And then, Albion was already there.
And they had music
and
in the back. And
Dr. Bombay's was opening at that point. So it just felt like you could go so many places in one night. You could always find something that was good for you, or where there's room.
Yeah.
And little restaurants that serviced all that. There was the Slice place, the art,
And then you have like your quirky places like that, just hangovers, like Esta Noche.
Yeah.
It had a little different flavor to it,
Yeah.
you know, so it still kind of had like.
Latin drag club.
Yeah, you know, it just kind of gave it a, you know, a little feel, different
Yeah,
feel.
it was definitely,
Yeah.
that was a cool place.
Yeah.
And then further down 16th Street, there was Liquid. That was a dance club. It was also really popular. It was started off as Pink, I think, and then it
Yeah.
became Liquid.
Yeah.
And then up on Mission Street, Bruno's opened, and that became a real big center. Bruno's, and there was another place near there, like a block away, that was also a nightclub with live music. Or dance, maybe it was more a DJ kind of place. And that was really popular. And those two places were like an axis of action. And then the Latin Makeout and Doc's Clock
yeah.
were this little triumvirate of bars and that people bounced around to. Had a whole scene there.
And then you had 12 Galaxies open up.
12 Galaxies on Mission was a major
Yeah.
factor because it was really popular and it was big and they booked really good bands. So it was kind of like what the Kilowatt does now, but a bigger version.
Yeah.
And then of course you had the old place, the Chameleon, which was punk rock
Yeah.
central for a decade.
Which was the anchor.
Yeah. Chameleon was there first.
Yeah.
And there was a Latin place called Bay Jones, which was really kind of cool. Every Thursday night they had Brazilian night, and so they had all Brazilian live music and people danced, and then they had jazz there on different nights. And
Yeah, and there were all the Latin clubs up here and everything too that were just, you know, really popular with the neighborhood, you know,
Yeah.
packed with people dancing.
here, yeah, just on this little
Yeah.
strip in north, of, what is it? We're south of Cesar Chavez. You know, you had El Rio, of course, which is still there, and Caesar's Latin Palace was really popular. Crossover place. It had a lot more white people who were going there at that point. Now, of course, I don't know. I don't go there now, but we used to go there. And,
But people didn't really
and there were
come
little
up
bars
on
up
the
here.
same
Not as much,
Mm-mm.
no. But you also had El Oso, which
Oh, yeah,
was
El
a
Oso.
big live salsa dancing club right near Radio Valencia. So, I don't know.
An awesome interior.
Yeah. There was a lot of activity on the street. It got to the point where the gangs had to move away. Oh, I don't know what happened with them, actually. I think the police started enforcing. They passed a new law which really did a number on the gangs, which was they would identify the corners where gangs hung, and they could make it illegal for people to be there. Like you couldn't occupy those corners, and it broke up the gangs after a couple years. It took a while, but once the gangs were gone, then like 18th and York was a major gang corner, and there was like a couple blocks from there was another major gang corner that was just people drove their cars there and got drugs, and it was occupied, and there was people standing on the street, and it was unsafe to go there. You would get mugged if you walked around in there. So none of that area around, what do you call it, the eastern flats, none of that area was a place that was safe to go. If you lived there, you had to be careful when you walked there at night. And a lot of people got mugged in the Mission in that area, on the other side of Blades, on the other side of South Venice.
But then it kind of wiped out the lowriders and that whole thing, which was kind of sad.
Yeah.
I thought.
There was a thing on Mission Street. The lowriders occupied Mission Street.
On Saturday or Sunday?
Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
On the weekend nights.
Really amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. And all the
I know
taquerias
it's-
everywhere, it was just like, it was cheap food, a lot of ethnic restaurants and taquerias. The ethnic restaurants weren't so great, but the taquerias were really good. And cheap, Everybody ate burritos.
Still.
still the case. But now there's so much more, you know, really good restaurants of a lot of different stripes.
More expensive.
More
Way
expensive.
more
Well, everything's
expensive.
more expensive, but still less expensive than everything else.
Relatively
you know, all the
speaking,
other
kind of.
restaurants are
Maybe
like
so.
everything seems to be like $25 now
No.
at restaurants. Our menu, when we a full dinner at Radio Valencia was $7.25, and you got a cup of soup, a sandwich, and a salad for $7.25.
Of course, that's why we lived in the basement for 10 years.
That's right.
We could have raised our prices.
Maybe. but
Oh, no, we could have.
There's debate about it. Anyway. I was always reluctant to raise the prices. Still, I still have that nature. I don't want to charge more than I absolutely have to.
What was the vibe like to go out? Like, how did it feel? Like, and just like hanging out in the Mission, like, and also like when you're there now, do you think it feels different in general?
I'd say it was a lot of young, white, hipster kids in the Mission. At that point, everybody was kind of the same, you know, college educated or thereabouts, you know, some amount of that, college education. A lot of people that were, you know, dropouts of one sort or another, people that didn't fit in wherever they were, or they moved to get away from bad families. There were a lot of people came from abusive households out to the West Coast. You know, obviously the gay community, there was a lot of damaged people that moved out to get away from conservative people and Christian families, and that were intolerant of their sexual nature or whatever. And then, you know, the same was kind of true of the people that were the creative ones, because they didn't fit in or they didn't do well in school, and they were looking for places where they could be creative, and the Mission was full of people like that. So everybody was, I think people were really happy and excited. I mean, they would complain about stuff like they didn't have enough money, or, you know, they had their job didn't pay that well. But, you know, everybody got by, and everybody got free this and that because their friends worked everywhere, and they would always get like, oh, I know, I can get a free burrito or whatever. You know, it was just like, I don't know.
And they were excited to be there. And then there was a point where, you know, people started saying like, I just missed it. If I would have moved here last year, that was the year to be here. And that's when I noticed a change. I was like, oh, wow, yeah. That's funny, you know.
It got
like,
popular to the point where people,
like around 97.
No, later.
Well, when did Shelley move here? Roller skate Shelley, our waitress who worked at Casanova.
Oh, she was at Casanova.
She said, I just missed it if I would have been.
No, she was here in 95, but that's wrong, though.
I remember her saying that, though.
Yeah, well, everyone always feels that.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else should come, and that,
yeah. But that's when the volume started happening, you know? You're like, that's when, like, we went away, you know, on our vacation. We were gone for, you know.
Months.
No, when we.
Oh, the 5 months?
Well, yeah, I guess it was when we went on our driving trip when the cafe broke down. And when we came back, Valencia Street I was like, where are we? This is crazy. It had changed so much in that few months that we were gone. Do you remember that? And we were walking down and all these places had opened up and we were just like, whoa.
But still down at like where the Casanova was, that area was still really funky, and it wasn't the same as it was in 98, 99.
No, it wasn't, but there was a noticeable shift, is what I'm saying.
You're
at that time
that,
where it was just, to me, it took me a second to adjust. I was just shocked. And we were only gone a few months, you know. And that's when the volume just started, like, exploding, I felt.
When we reopened the cafe, we were a lot busier.
Well, we were jammed.
Yeah, it stayed that way all the way until we sold it.
Yeah. That Mission was on the map. You know, Valencia
But in
Street was
90
definitely on the map, and it felt like when Haight Street was really busy.
But that was, to me, that was 97. That was when
Mhm.
the real boom happened, like
Mhm.
where it was recognized.
Yeah.
And people came from all over
Yeah.
the Bay Area
Yeah.
to the mission.
Yeah, that's definitely true too.
That was the year.
Yeah.
The year you arrived.
Yeah.
Part of the population boom on Valencia Street.
We were the only ones having babies. Or so it seemed.
In our crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every
Everybody
mom
was
I met
younger.
after that, when you guys got into school, was my age. So that, you know, but where we were, everybody was younger.
Yeah. We were.
And
connected
the
with
people
younger
that
crowd.
were my age were like, I'm not having kids, except for Mary.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it was very, I mean, it was exciting. I think mostly about music, but also, you know, like fashion was really significant. Everybody was in their 20s, or not everyone, but most of the people were in their 20s and early 30s. So they were conscientious about what they wore, or they looked a certain way. You know, I don't know if they were, you know, it wasn't that put together necessarily, but obviously there were a lot of women that were very put together with a sort of a retro. I mean, I remember
Vintage
it
40s.
felt like 40s, yeah. That was really fashionable. Everybody was into vintage stores, and we would go on our day off every Tuesday. We would go down the peninsula to all the thrift stores, all the way down to Redwood City and a little beyond, and then alternate weeks we would go to Fremont on a corridor through San Leandro and over that way,
And out to Walnut Creek.
and then out to Walnut Creek. Yeah. So we were doing thrift shopping routinely, or we got all the junk that we put up in the Casanova and Radio Valencia.
Junk.
All the junk.
Artifacts.
Were junk artifacts. 15 cents at the thrift store. Or some collection of some family portraits or something.
When you're in the mission now, do you feel any of that same thing, or does it feel totally different now?
Now it feels to me, I feel like it's more diverse. Noticeably more diverse at the Casanova. More multi-ethnic, you know, people from different backgrounds. So that's a significant change that I noticed. But, you know, there's obviously a lot of people that are connected to tech. I feel like that's been the case through the whole time. All of this 90s boom and stuff was, a lot of people were involved in the industry in some way or another. They got their money through the tech expansion because there was so much money coming into the area from that, either biotech or, you know, just straight up, you know, the computers and all the, you know, the internet, all the applications that were being developed. Everything that was
Everybody going digital.
Everything that was happening was being done here. It felt like
Yeah.
all the big companies were based in San Francisco, so everybody worked for them in one way or another. Either the service industry that served all those people that were working, doing the, you know.
Well, I think that we felt the impact from that from the beginning in different ways, but the community or the environment that we were in, starting in the 80s and moving all the way through the 90s, was pretty homogenous and one type, you know, musicians and artists and creative people, and they just kind of dominated the mission, you know, and Valencia Street in particular. And then in the 2000s, that kind of broke up a little bit. People were feeling that shift. More people were feeling the shift, not just us, you know.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, the music thing kind of came back a bit, you know, and there were still a lot of musicians around, and that kind of hung on, you know, for a good while. And then around 2015, 16, you started feeling another kind of shift of like when your dad wanted to open up a music club and he opened up the Hemlock, he did that because there were no clubs at that point. They all were dying out. And so he opened up the Hemlock, and then everybody went there. And then that revitalized that whole area, and that lasted about 10 years, and then it started, or 15 years, and then it just started fading again. And so it doesn't feel like that has come back. But we're not as engaged, as we were. So I don't know, maybe it is.
We're not as clear about
Yeah.
what's going on, but it seemed like for the punk rock thing, which was what we were connected with at the Hemlock, it was clear that all those kids were moving. All the young musicians were moving to Oakland.
Yeah.
And that was happening even
Early.
in the 2000s, early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
And then it just kept growing more
Yeah.
and more over there and less here. So
People couldn't afford to be here.
people here moved out to the avenues, out into the outer Sunset, and found cheap rents out there. And then they would commute into their job, and that's still happening.
Yeah.
But
That was just the rent thing and all that stuff.
Yeah, the
It
rent
was just, there was no cushion. Yeah. It was pretty stark.
The old model where you could live with people and pay, what I said, $250, suddenly it was like basically $1,500 was more the baseline, maybe a little bit less, maybe $1,200, but definitely over $1,000 was the basic rent for one of those rooms in the same flats that were renting out for a quarter of that.
Yeah.
That was just too much to make your way part-time on a service job, because I think the key thing that made it all work, and the reason there were so many musicians and the reason there were so many bands, is because no one worked full-time.
No, because they had this time to devote to what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And they could make just enough so that they could really just have the time to do their work, play their shows, do their tours, whatever they were doing, because the rent was so low. Like, I had a little studio connected to my bedroom when I lived on Guerrero on 18th. I think I paid $350, and I got that extra room because I was playing just a little bit more than everybody else. So it was like, great, I could just I could use that, and I could develop my art if I wanted to, but it didn't matter if I didn't. I was working full time, but still, it just, that's the difference. Like, if you think, well, maybe I would like to, do that for a living. It gave people the opportunity financially to be able to have the time to do it, and then also because there were so many people, they all could really support each other. And there were people who were interested, like us, in what they were doing and happy to be a part of that and giving them a place to perform. And so it's just the whole ecosystem works really well.
You didn't have to be that great to survive.
No.
You could be learning how to do what you were doing and get people to go, your friends to come out and see you. And it was doable, it was easy. But that's because, everybody worked under 20 hours a week, or 20, maybe 23, or, in that range, like 3 or 4 shifts of working as a bartender or as a waiter or, in the service industry. People worked at bakeries and cafes and stuff, the counter staff. And it was easy to get jobs because there were a lot of those people, and there were a lot of people that needed those services. Like, the whole service industry was consuming the service industry offerings, as well as the people that were going to work in tech and making real money.
And that's the difference today, is that you can't, it's hard to be able to do that. So in Oakland, you can do that,
It's
easier, although Oakland is getting a little bit expensive, but it's still, vibrant there because people don't have to work full-time.
Yeah.
So Sadie's asking questions. We're digressing.
No, it's good. It's good to just let it be natural and just go where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
But I have more questions for artists.
I was in band for 10 years.
Yeah.
Led a band. So I was involved in that.
Yeah, so your dad might be able to say, I don't know if you're interested
Music
in
history.
his experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about that, what
'Cause
it was
he-
like to be in a
Well,
band, or just like,
During that time.
Yeah.
It was easy to be in a band in the sense that there were a lot of musicians.
right.
And so I was managing a 12-piece dance band,
Mhm.
Latin dance band that did sort of a, kind of psychedelic version of, Boogaloo and New York dance music from the 60s. And so we had 4 percussionists, 4 horn players, guitar, piano, drums. Well, the drums were all the percussionists. There was no drummer. We had, timbales, bongos, congas, and percussion. And sometimes we had singers. But you could set that up. There were enough musicians that people could fill in. I had like a roster of like 8 horn players that I could call to get fill-ins if somebody couldn't make it. And we were playing clubs. We played Bruno's was a big thing for us because we got booked every week for about 8 months of their first year of being in business. We played once a week there, not consistently, but we played every Thursday, and we had a break for a while, and then we came back and played every Thursday, and they paid us $600 a night, so, and drinks and food, so it was like really,
So you each
it was
got
a big deal.
$50?
And it was packed. Yeah, I mean, we didn't get paid much, but we got drinks.
Yeah.
Drinks for tips
Yeah.
and food.
Sure.
And there was a good restaurant.
Yeah,
it was
they
a
had good
really
food.
good restaurant. So it was really a good deal. And it also, because we had a weekly gig, we really got good at what we were doing because we rehearsed once a week, and then we played once a week, and we played for 3 hours. So it was a long set. We played I guess we did 2 sets. We played for like an hour, took a break, and then came back and did another hour set. But it was all dance music, so it was we had a following.
Extremely
A lot of people
It's
that
packed
came.
house.
Yeah, it was packed. It was all sweaty and
Yeah.
fun. It was really great. There were, good memories.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite places to go when you would go out at that time? Like,
Well, for me, I would go to Bruno's a
Yeah.
lot because they also booked jazz, and so it was other stuff that I was interested in. And I also knew the owner, so I could always get in, and I could get free drinks and stuff like that. It was close to where I lived as well, but because I lived right around the corner, so that was a favorite place for me.
And we hung out a lot at the cafe when we had the cafe, especially the 5 years of the jazz nights. We were
I was there.
for that, and a lot of the music. And so we were really
I booked it, so-
entrenched in that project and that our social life when everything was around that. We didn't really do much else outside of that regularly until you started playing with El Camino. And then,
Yeah, we played at the Makeout, so I hung out at the Makeout a lot. I was friends with the owner and hung out at the Latin when we were just going out to drink. And everybody that worked at Radio Valencia did the same.
Yeah.
They basically hung out at the Latin or the Makeout.
And then when the Makeout opened, yeah.
And then, so then when we opened the Casanova, then I was kind of shifted between the Casanova and Radio Valencia.
And that was a whole other neighborhood.
right.
So
Yeah.
there was 23rd Street and everybody who was just there, and that was their scene. And then down at 16th was like, those people didn't go down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was funny.
23rd was
Different
was the
scenes.
suburbs to people
Yeah.
that were down at 16th.
Yeah.
When I told people I was going to open the cafe, they would be, what? At
Where
23rd in
is that?
Valencia? Where is that? And I say, well, it's just straight up there.
Oh, 5 blocks
you,
up.
20-minute walk, and you're there. It's not that far. But people would be like, wow, that's like going to the suburbs. I don't ever go up there.
Well, plus you had to walk past that scary park. So
Yeah,
that
that's
was
true.
like it
There
felt
was-
different.
There was a no man's land
Yeah.
in the middle
Yeah.
where the gangs controlled
Yeah.
between 19th and 20th.
Yeah.
But people would go to the Chameleon from down there, or they'd go down to the Chameleon from up there, but nobody crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Chameleon
Two
was
different
in the
things
middle.
altogether.
But,
Yeah.
but we went to, I didn't go to the Chameleon a lot. I did go for specific things. But I was, yeah, as you're saying, occupied by both managing and running Casanova in the 97 on.
Having kids.
And then, yeah, then we had kids.
Yeah.
So, and I went to every show that I booked, all the free jazz stuff that I did at at Radio Valencia. I went to every show because I took care of the musicians.
And there was a lot of other stuff that happened too, like Danny would bring people and there'd be events and, you know, just different stuff that happened there. So it was you know,
And I
a
also
big job.
went to Slim's a lot because Slim's was doing roots
Yeah,
music. They
Slim's.
have all these blues musicians and Jamaican musicians and rock, you know.
And country,
rock
I
that
saw
they
Lucinda
became-
there.
Yeah. So, and we were friends with the booker there, so he would give us tickets for calling. And also, we did a little promo for the Slim stuff when they first opened. We did promos at the cafe, so we were kind of friends. He was from Madison also, so I knew him before I moved here. And so I went to Slim's a lot in those years, which was fantastic because they had Sun Ra and, you know, Ornette Coleman and, you know, lots of different, they had such a diverse program at Slim's during that period when he booked it. It was
Harry, that was his name.
Harry Duncan.
Yeah, Harry Duncan.
Yeah. So that was really a great place for me. And then I went to the Makeout. I always hung out at the Makeout. And there
And
were
also
always friends
Bottom
playing
Hill.
there.
You know, there were a lot of shows
Yeah.
at Bottom of the Hill.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Bottom of the Hill was a mainstay throughout.
Yeah.
But you were going to see his show there.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
You weren't
right.
going there
You were
to
just
hang
far
out.
off.
Yeah.
Never,
Yeah.
never.
No,
No, it
not
wasn't.
true.
It
Yeah.
wasn't close by.
Right.
And
No.
you
Still
know,
that way.
I mean, later on,
Might
I
have
ended up
drinks in
going
the Mission and then go to the
Yeah.
bottom. And,
Mhm.
yeah.
in the teens, and you know, after 2010,
Mhm.
when I was running the Hemlock, and I ended up going to the Parkside and the Bottom of the Hill a lot. After going to the Hemlock and seeing shows, I would go
That
over
makes
there.
sense on your way back.
Yeah, I would drive. I had friends that were friends with kind of mutual friends that were connected with the owners of all the places. So I had a nice little circuit of,
Mhm.
you know, we were friends with when we had the Hemlock, we were friends with the Great American.
Mhm.
And so I would get into the Great American. I knew the manager there, so I would go there
That's not
sometimes.
the mission,
I would just go there
Yeah,
and
but-
see
It was all part of
shows,
it.
you know.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
well,
it
it's
was
a small city,
It
so.
was a
Yeah.
good venue, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you know, it was a very important part of my music world,
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
But also
So-
too, when you opened the Hemlock, people were like, "Where? Why aren't you
Right.
opening it in the Mission? Like, what
Right.
are you,
Yeah.
Polk Street? Like
Yeah.
what?" And then you know, after we got it going and you worked on it and everything, and Anthony started booking, then everybody in the Mission went there.
Mm.
Yeah. And
You know, but for like it was like crickets for a while.
Yeah.
You know, because there was just nobody went over there from the Mission.
It was only the first 3 months,
Yeah, yeah,
but it was scary.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody came when we
Right.
first opened the Hemlock. No one
Yeah.
came.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
like,
It's like,
wow, this might
This
not have
feels
been a
really
good.
big in here now.
Yeah.
This might not have been a good idea. And then, yeah, and then.
But then you figured it out.
Once it happened, once we got our live music permit, we didn't have the permit at first, so we were just a bar. And we were developing the back area. And then when we got the permit to do that, then we booked it, and then it all took off.
Yeah.
But it was scary.
But yeah.
So we had a lot invested. But once the Hemlock was going, I was there usually like 3 nights a week to see shows. 2 or 3 minimum. Well, almost always 2, and sometimes 3.
Yeah.
So that was a very involved life
Mhm.
because we had kids at that point. And so
But it was great because you supported everybody, all the bands and everything at a time, and they really needed that, where it was kind of critical in a way.
Yeah, the Parkside was
so
open,
that
but
was really, but it just,
Bottom of the hill
everything
and
was
Parkside.
closing,
Yeah.
So that was really important. So it just became a hub again for all the same people in the mission, all the bands and all that stuff and everything. It was important for that because I don't know what was going on with the Kilowatt. It was still there.
Kilowatt didn't do live music.
Oh.
Yeah. They shut down live music.
That's right. I forgot about
something
that.
like about 90,
Yeah.
94, 95, something
Yeah.
like that.
And Chameleon
Stuff.
closed,
Chameleon was closed.
And
yeah.
that was a huge loss. Things were just kind of winding down.
Yeah, when we opened the Hemlock, we had a tiny room. It was smaller than it was later. At the end, we had a capacity of about 100, 105 or something like that. But in the early days, it was just like a DIY performance space where you would do your own sound from the stage, and it was like really rinky-dink. And there were bleacher seats, and it was,
It's supposed to be like a singer-songwriter.
yeah, it was kind of like, 4D capacity, felt like a different, but, immediately we were booking bands that were touring bands that were huge, like had huge amplifiers and everything. It was like, what are you doing with all that stuff here? There's no, do you see the room? They were like used to having the backstage area that they would hang out be the size of our whole room. So it was really, really weird because there weren't any places for bands to play. The Bottom of the Hill was the only place open, and Parkside. And I don't think anything else was booking touring bands or not rock bands
At that
anyway.
level,
Yeah. So it was kind of important, and we had to grow up fast.
That was in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah, 2001 is when we opened.
Yep.
So it was 2002 was when we really started kicking. Yeah, 9/11 happened while we were building the Hemlock.
Mhm.
Do you
Yes.
still feel like that, sense of community, like how you're talking about, like knowing everybody from all the different clubs and stuff, and do you feel like that's still a thing that you feel or that you sense?
Well, I feel like personally, I
Yeah.
feel like, well, I don't really go out that much.
Mm-hmm.
I do know the GM at the Great American,
Mm-hmm.
and I have some history, so I know people
Mm-hmm.
that are bartenders at the Bottom of the Hill, or the person that books at the Bottom of the Hill,
Mm-hmm.
and I've just been around for over 30 years, so it's like I do know people, but I don't go out that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the Right Spot more than anywhere now.
Yeah.
And I go to the Makeout still, and I know those guys,
Mm-hmm.
and I go to the chapel. And I know the chapel. I've been introduced to the chapel, but I don't ever call in to get tickets or anything at the chapel because I don't go that much, and I just get tickets when there's something I want to go to. Now I go to the Independent sometimes, and Great American, of course, and the Fillmore.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to go to places that have seats now, so I'll go to the Masonic because I can get a chair. I'll pay more to get a ticket for a place where there's a theater seating style to the venue because I don't like to stand as much as I used to, just because of my age. It's like a little harder. So I listen to a lot more jazz. I go to SF Jazz and to the Right Spot where I get seats, and SF Jazz where I have seats, and other places. But I'll go to the Great American. I'm going to the Great American tonight to see an old '90s band.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Steel Pole Bathtub. But man, I used to be 3 venues a night
Yeah.
back in the day, and
But it feels different now.
it's way different for
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
I think it's different for everybody. I mean, there were a lot more things that were inexpensive to do then. You know, all the venue, like, you know, cover charges were $5.
Yeah.
A lot, you know, the Kilowatt Chameleon, $5. You know, if you were on the list, you could get on the list if you needed to. But, you know, I didn't need to. But there were always good attendance at these shows, even with people that had no money, because everything was cheap enough.
And also, too, it's just like when you live in a city, people roll through, you know, and you know, there's times where it's really maybe exciting. There's something happening, a scene happening where you live, and it draws a lot of people. But a lot of people don't intend to stay, you know. So going through the shifts, like the emotional shifts like that, you know, I feel like my experience was a lot of losing people, a lot, you know, and I learned to just like not get too attached, you know, because it was, you know, wasn't necessarily that people were looking to come here to live and settle down and have a family anyway from the beginning. And people who, you know, wanted that, you know, then there was that where it became clear they wouldn't be able to do that because they didn't have the lifestyle or the career that would support that. So it was, you know, always kind of like this, just losing people, you know, something you'd get in a thing would be happening and be really fun, and everybody would kind of be a gang, you know, of like-minded people, and then that would disperse, and then some that would build up again. And to me, that's how the mission was for me, and that's how San Francisco always kind of has been, you know, where that's just part of it is just living in a city, you know. Not everybody's meant to stay.
In the 90s, San Francisco was the best music center in all of the whole West Coast, really. I mean, Seattle had a scene, Portland had a little bit, but San Francisco was the strongest. LA had nothing, really, not much. I mean, now LA is very, very established, and there's a lot of good clubs and a real live music scene there. And a lot of people from here moved to LA. A lot of people from here moved to Portland and Seattle even, but more Portland, I think. And then Austin, you know, people started moving to Austin. People, like, there's a lot of, there's a diaspora of people, but they all came here from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they just came here to figure out what they were doing, and then when they figured it out, they moved.
Yeah, well, they came here because it was clear, you know, what was going on.
It was a good place.
You know. Yeah, but I don't know.
I mean, obviously, a lot of people are still here. The ones that could figured out
Yeah.
a way to buy a house,
Yeah.
like, they can stay. But
Yeah.
and we know a lot of people like that. But also, people with rent-controlled apartments, they got in and they could stay. You know, it was as long as they could stay at that apartment.
But
They were
even
good.
with that, you know, with people leaving, so many people leaving, you know, that would be a reason to go, right? Somewhere else. Like you're here for the musicians and the music and playing and, you know, doing, you know, having your creative life. And even if you could stay here, people chose not to. Like Dwyer and people like that who were successful chose to go to LA because then that's where he could really, there's a lot more people there, moving there, and, you know, he can make a go of it there. There's just, you know, that.
Yeah, he bought a house there, too.
Yeah, well, and,
So.
he could buy a house there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's reasons why also people were moving to LA because it was cheaper to live there at the time. But,
A lot cheaper.
yeah. So they just kind of you go where you can.
But now it's gotten
Exist.
expensive everywhere else, so it's more neutral.
Now California's done.
Well, no, I mean,
No,
now people
just
go to
kidding,
Reno.
there's places.
People go to Reno.
There's
also.
hope, you guys. Don't go anywhere.
People move to
We'll
Sacramento.
find you a place to live.
Vallejo, did you say?
Vallejo,
The,
yeah.
the exodus to Fremont.
I mean, you know, it's like, honestly, that's how it works. When I moved to the mission, you know, my friends that I worked with, you know, I worked for a magazine, I worked in the art department. all my friends were like, well, what the hell are you doing? Why are you moving there? That's like, you know, are you sure? You know, they were, you know, they didn't want to come visit. Some of my friends from the East Bay did not want to come to the mission.
Because it was
You know?
dangerous?
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, because you just get hassled, especially as a woman, as a young woman, you know, and there shit happens, right? But if you lived in the mission, you understood that you really weren't a target.
Right.
Normally, right? But that's how it works. So now, like, you know, you just find another place that's like that, you know, where people are like, what? Why would you want to live there? Well, because, you know, all my friends live there. You know, I mean, that's what happened to Oakland. Oakland blew up. Like, I moved from Oakland to San Francisco, and nobody would go to Oakland. Why would you live there? People would always ask me that. I wouldn't go there. Why would you live there? Like, people didn't go across the bridge. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, it was just, why would you be anywhere else but in the mission in San Francisco? You know, and then all those people ended up, most of them moving to Oakland.
All the people that were like that.
That were like that.
Yeah.
Moved to Oakland. Because Oakland's great. And, you know, the East Bay is very different from San Francisco, but it's also really great. And then so many people moved there that it kind of, you know, created a scene, and you could open a business, and people, you know, would come to your business, and, you know, you could, you know, have your lifestyle there that you used to have in San Francisco, you could have in Oakland. So that's just how it is. You find it like Vallejo or a place like that, and all of a sudden something starts happening.
You know,
That's
Telegraph.
the evolution.
West of Telegraph,
artists.
you know, West Oakland. That's very much like the mission was when we moved into
Yeah.
the mission.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, a lot of cheap housing.
Uh-huh.
Very mixed, a little bit unsafe, definitely unsafe.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of sketchy stuff. But
it-
also
yeah.
a lot of, you know, like the Stork Club is there, and all these cheap restaurants, and all the creative stuff is happening there with young people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
That's
Just
where-
constantly evolving.
that's where we'd probably move
Creative
if we
people
came
make
here
it happen.
now.
Yeah, you think you'd go to Oakland?
I
If
think
you were,
so.
like,
If
in
I
your
were
20s
if
now.
I were doing the exact same thing,
Yeah.
And it were now, I would be looking in Oakland.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because
there's
I'd want
lots-
to be the bars, and I'd
Yeah.
want to be in the bars.
And there's lots of older, you know, now it's not the same, but, you know, like if it were like 10 years ago even still, there are a lot of places that you could just rent out for cheap, like a bar, you know, where you could start your bar there. And that rent wouldn't be that you wouldn't have to buy the building, or you might be able to even buy the building. There's just a lot of really old, cool spots, you know, old neighborhoods and stuff. Cool houses to live in, you know, nice with yards, you know what I mean, that you can afford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's already happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
most of the old bars and stuff have been bought and converted.
I mean, look at how
in
many
the
people
last
live in West
10
Oakland
years,
already.
15 years. yeah.
West Oakland, you know, West Oakland was like, oh no, you cannot go to West
No
Oakland.
one would live there.
You
I
know,
mean,
when
people did
Ramona
live there.
moved there from the bottom, she bought it was like a house, but had like a big building because
A
her son
warehouse.
was like a warehouse, because her son was a skateboarder, professional skateboarder. And she was like, you know, everybody just was like, and single mom, like, what are you doing out there, Ramona? You're going to get killed. And she's like, nothing ever happened, you know. And now she's like, all these people live out there.
Mhm.
She's like, it's great, you know, but you know, it's just a perception.
Yeah.
Well, the pioneers always get the cheapest rent.
Yeah.
She bought a building.
She
so,
bought it, yeah.
So it's probably, I mean, the availability of, you know, things in those kind of neighborhoods where nobody wants to go, you can buy stuff for cheap. And especially if you keep your eye open for a while. There's those little seams. I mean, the seams now are in San Francisco or more in the Bay View district. You know, it's still not that developed, and a little further south, the borderline areas. You know, and I don't know if ever Daly City's going to take off. It's like in L.A., everyone lives in a place like Daly City.
Right.
It feels like all the neighborhoods
Mhm.
are like I don't understand why people in San Francisco never move south down the peninsula. I know the peninsula is not that cheap, so maybe that's just
Yeah, it's gotten more expensive too.
simply the reason, you know.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Going south is, or north, is kind of like,
yeah,
it's very
everything's,
expensive.
the tech thing down in Silicon Valley pushed rents up throughout the whole peninsula. So
Yeah.
that's
Anyway.
just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of, this has always been a boom town.
Yeah.
There's always been, you know,
Yeah.
from the gold rush till, you know.
I'm just here for the weather.
Yeah.
I love the weather, and San Francisco's just so dang pretty.
Mhm.
I can't give up on her.
And it
Just-
still has such a good vibe. I think.
I just love,
It's
I
like,
love it.
If you're lucky
I love
enough
it.
to like either have lived here for a really long time or like have tapped into the cool stuff that it's
Yeah.
like, there is so much
Yeah.
cool
So
stuff to be a part
Yeah.
of, and the, like
Yes.
you know, and always new places. I'm always finding out about new
Yeah.
places that I haven't been that are doing
Yeah.
cool shit.
Mhm.
Always, still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
now, and it's like I know that, but I just like it's like I think if you're moving here without that intention, it's harder to
Yes.
see that or
Yes.
tap into it because you don't really have
No.
it's not so obvious. You
No.
have to really know people and you have to know where to look. And like I feel like in the 90s and early 2000s it was, or like maybe less in the early 2000s, but the 90s for sure it was kind of like, oh yeah, if you want to be like do cool arty shit, you go to the Mission. Like it was
Mhm.
kind of like more obvious. Like that's just
Yeah.
everywhere you look,
That's
you're
where you
gonna
belong.
see that.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's like, no, it's not really that, but it is there.
Yeah.
If you know where to go and
Yes.
you know who the cool people are,
Yes.
like what that scene
And people who
is.
have energy and are making things happen, and you know who
Yeah,
those people are. and
then you can easily
Yeah.
find it, but you have to
Yeah.
kind of, it's not as like, oh, just walk in a random place and it's,
No.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a little bit more,
Yeah.
it's not as obvious.
And also too, just the topography and everything. I just
Yeah.
feel like living in a hilly city is just like the greatest thing because
Yeah.
you can get out above it. You can walk and get out above it, and you just have space. You know, where
Totally.
a lot of times cities don't have that, where it's just all
Yeah.
flat, and you have to drive a distance to get somewhere to get, just get
Yeah.
out of it. I like that, the visual part of San Francisco a lot.
Yeah.
And it has the ocean right there, and
Mhm.
it's just like vibrant
Yeah.
visually,
Yeah.
It's like it's a sensory place for me.
And it's so small. I think that really, you feel everything so much because of that, which is very
Yes.
unique for a city.
You
Because
really
usually
feel the
cities aren't
impact.
as tiny, but it's
Yeah.
like because everything is so close together and
Yeah.
each neighborhood has such
Yeah.
a distinct feeling. It's like
Yeah.
if there's any little micro change in
Right.
a neighborhood, you immediately are like,
Right.
oh my god, it's different. Oh my god,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like you're so like
Yeah.
attuned and like sensitive to things
Yeah.
here because it's so
Yeah,
like small. and-
yeah.
And one business can really have an impact.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can.
You know, like the
Totally.
chapel
Absolutely.
Yeah.
on Valencia Street was a big source of, is continuing to be a big source of energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it brings a lot of people in,
Yeah.
and you know, it affects the Casanova business
Mhm.
because we get the spillover before
Yeah.
shows, after shows,
Mhm.
and so
People come in and eat, and and then go to a
Mhm.
show, and they
Yeah.
don't necessarily eat just at the chapel. It's like
yeah,
it
it comes.
contributes to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a sizable,
Definitely true.
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway.
you know, there's, like, that is a business that wasn't here in the 90s.
Right.
You know, I was a college in the 90s.
Right,
And it
yeah.
wasn't much of a contributor.
And it wasn't
Totally.
just
To what's
it was
going
very
on.
quiet. There wasn't any.
Yeah.
Didn't have any energy.
So, as
Yeah.
you see those kind of developments, it'll keep evolving,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
forever. I mean, I don't really feel like San Francisco will ever really
No.
go down
And people
in
your age are going to
people's
start doing
esteem.
stuff. There's going to, you're getting to the age now where people are going to be like, I think I want to open a business.
Mhm.
I think I want to do this, open this gallery / performance space or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's going to start affecting things,
Mhm.
Mhm.
because you have to get to a certain age. Like your dad was, how old you were, 32 or 31. I was 28,
Mhm.
when we, or 29 when we really.
When we started the business.
So then you were 36?
Oh wait, no, yeah, I was
No.
20. I was 28.
In 97, I was...
No, in
40.
90, in 1990 we opened Radio Valencia.
Oh, yeah.
I was like 28 or something, and your dad
You
was
were
third, whatever, how
30.
I was just 35.
35.
or 36.
So, you know, you get in that age,
Yeah.
the upper 20s into the 30s,
Mhm.
you know, and a lot of people my age, you know, shortly after that, were opening businesses and doing
Yeah.
stuff, you know, it's
Sure.
just like, you know, you kind of figure it out, and then, you know, and then you get a partner with somebody who wants to do it with you.
Yeah.
And then it starts happening, you know,
Mhm.
so hopefully there's enough of that.
Yeah, I
you know.
think so. I mean, I never am too worried about it because I just see so many people that are so talented and really dedicated
Yeah.
to San Francisco.
And that's what it
And I
takes.
think like that's like the other thing that really makes it unique is that people that live here and have chosen to live here, it's like they're fucking staying. Like they love
Yeah.
it, and like they're like
Yeah,
gonna
committed.
try to make it work as
Yeah.
long as they can, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like you know that it's
Yeah.
like really special and it's
Yeah.
not that easy to find a place.
And those
like
are
this,
people that are
so-
going to come
There's
up with
nothing like
solutions
it.
to that.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
And the
Yeah.
solution is to
So-
open a business, probably start some,
Right.
you know, entrepreneurial project.
Yeah.
You know,
I never worry too much about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like I know so many people that are like just so cool and smart and talented and
Yeah.
really love it
Yeah.
for the same reasons I do, and
Well, that's
makes a lot of
exciting for
sense
me.
to
That's why
stay.
I don't want to leave. I want
Yeah.
to see that
Totally.
bubble again. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it'll happen,
Like what's
for
happening
sure.
next. It's
yeah.
like,
And I feel like that's kind of the point of this project too for me is like I think it's important to talk about how it was back then, and like I think that was a really special, cool time that like
Yeah.
I don't want people to forget, like because also people our age, it's like we were too young to really.
Right.
I don't really remember. Like I have memories of when I was a kid, but like you know you're a kid, so it's just
It's different.
You're not tapped into things the way
No.
you are
Yeah.
now. But yeah, so I think that's cool to like preserve that, but then also to show like.
yeah.
That never really ended. It's like
Yeah.
still so here, and people that are here because of
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like-
And then, you know, if you go back in history, you know, you
Yeah.
see that, you know, there's just times, you know,
Yeah.
like in the 50s, it was,
Right.
the 50s and early 60s, North Beach was the scene.
Yeah,
You know? It was
yeah.
like, there was a lot going on there.
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody talks about it. I've heard the history
Right.
from people there, you know, like when you go to poetry readings or something. People
Yeah.
talk about those days at North Beach and Trieste and Vesuvio's and the, you know,
Mhm.
places that are still there, but,
Yeah.
you know, there was that. And then I know about the history of the hate.
Right.
I saw it at in '69, but and I went to Golden Gate Park and saw concerts and stuff at that time when I was 14. So
Yeah.
I got a glimpse of it, but I don't really know the full thing. But I know, you know, I know that I was a fan of the bands that were popular
Mhm.
in the '60s in San Francisco.
Yeah, people
And it
always
was-
talk that
it was
forever the same way, you know.
Yeah.
It was-
You know, and in the 80s, you know, definitely there's the whole thing with the early punk rock stuff in San
Yeah.
Francisco in the 80s. People are, you know, were very attached to that and everything
Yeah.
too, and that morphed in. So you guys will morph it into something. and
Yeah.
It'll,
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
be really interesting.
Yeah.
Is there
I-
another
yeah.
music, another whole different kind of music development that could happen based on a synthesis of technology
Yeah.
and
Oh, okay.
You
I
gotta
think
go?
it's fine.
No, I don't have to go. My camera.
The card.